Using a walker. I'm going to demonstrate a way, not the way, but a way of using a walker first. So if you only watch a couple seconds of this video, you have some constructive idea to explore. And then I'll go into some of the problems and the what not to do stuff, which is more the meat of the matter. But if you only have a couple of seconds, here is a way of conceptualizing moving with a walker. So I have my hands on the walker, and I and the walker are moving together. I've got my own support. I'm allowing the floor to be supporting me. I'm moving up, and the walker's there if I do need it, if I do trip, if I do lose my balance. But I am not making the walker into a more difficult task than it needs to be. How do most elderly people use a walker? In my observation, and this is not a scientific study or anything, this is just what I've observed through casual observation, and then also what I noticed with my grandmother, who lived to be 106, by the way, so it's not that there was some terrible problem here, but this seems like maybe she would have lived to 110 if she had explored a different way of thinking about this. So what I've observed people tend to do is grip very tightly and focus very hard, you can see, and move like this. And by putting a lot of weight onto the walker, making the walker heavier and more difficult to move, and making it more difficult to move one's own weight because it's not over one's feet, but rather is somewhere in between oneself and the walker. Okay, so when does a person get a walker? My understanding is they've had a fall, and when the day comes that a walker comes into their life, there's a thought of, okay, now I'm bound to be a person who walks with a walker for the rest of my life, or until I'm wheelchair bound instead, but it's going to be decline. And so those are some thoughts that are scary or depressing. And having just had a fall, a person is usually carrying some kind of extra effort belief around with them. I have to work extra hard not to have another fall. Actually, that is pretty counterproductive. And we often don't notice that we're holding those beliefs, that we're carrying that in our patterns of movement. It just goes into the background. It becomes a new habit. A person can have it revealed to them that they've been holding on to this tendency and activating it in every situation where there's some circumstance that calls for it or seems to call for it, and realize, oh wow, I've been doing that every single time and I hadn't noticed it. These things come to feel so normal to us that we don't notice them. But Alexander's discoveries about movement were not just about the body, they were about the psychophysical self, mental and physical. That includes emotion too. So I've had a fall recently. I'm operating from this kind of cautious space, and now I'm given a walker. It's a bad footing to start from to begin a relationship with a new object that's going to be a big part of one's life. It's a an unpleasant and sad foundation to start from. If I can take a moment to question the other possibilities, question the assumptions, and see what other possibilities are available, I can bring a different attitude to the walker. A way of approaching this might be to first reach over to the walker, just touch it, sense what that experience is like, hold it just enough to be able to move it forward and back, and then take a few steps with it. Conducting some experiments of sensation to find out what that experience can be like. What is the most constructive? What is the most sound way of working with this tool rather than working for it, working with this tool, getting to know it. Let's say you took 10 minutes to get to know a new person you were going to be working with every single day for the rest of your life, potentially. That wouldn't be a large investment. And the same could be really worth doing with a physical object that's going to have such an intimate relationship. You might check out how you sense the floor through the walker as well. It's an extension of senses as well as an extension of limbs. So if you go over a bump, you'll feel a little bump. It extends the distance to which you can sense a kinesthetic tactile sense. You might feel a bump that you couldn't actually see. There are plenty of other explorations that can be done in addition to what I've mentioned here, and so I just invite you and anyone to be your own scientist, to be your own experimenter. Conduct little experiments and see what your sensations tell you. Look at comparisons and take a look at what thinking are you bringing to the activity, what assumptions are you bringing to it. You might also check out the fact that there is space behind you as well as in front of you. Take a look at the fact that there is space above you as well as above your head, as well as where your eyes are looking. Our eyes only show us one direction, and it can blind us to what's not in the visual field. But guess what? It's still there. And when you see a person in this kind of state, you can see that their focus is narrowed into what's within their visual field and narrowed into a certain relationship with the walker, allowing for expansion beyond those kind of assumptions is what this work is about, what this discovery that Alexander made is about. And there are boundless possibilities available in investigating that. Thanks for watching this. I hope it's been useful, and I welcome responses.